The kitchen was quiet when I woke up that Tuesday morning. Too quiet. I checked the clock. It was 5:30 a.m. I usually woke up before Nora, gave myself time to get the coffee going, crack a couple of eggs, maybe toast some bread. It was our routine, and I liked it. Made me feel useful, needed, like I had a role in her day. But that morning, something felt off. It wasn't just the stillness. It was this nagging itch at the back of my mind. Nora had been distant for a while. Not the fighting kind of distant. No, nothing that dramatic. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was pulling away, bit by bit. The late nights at work, the "I'm just tired" excuses when I tried to talk to her about it. The way she barely looked at me over dinner. But I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. Things were fine. I'd been doing this breakfast thing for 15 years. Maybe it was just a phase. Maybe she was just busy. The coffee started brewing, filling the air with its rich, bitter scent. I cracked eggs into a pan, the hiss of the yolks meeting the heat almost soothing. When Nora finally wandered into the kitchen, she kissed me quickly, one of those quick pecks that didn't quite land, and grabbed her coffee from the counter. "Morning," she said, her voice quiet but not unfriendly. "Morning," I replied, flipping the eggs. I was trying to hold on to the normalcy of it all, trying to pretend like everything was still okay. "You're gonna be late again?" She nodded, took a sip of her coffee, and glanced at her watch. "Yeah, I'll be late tonight too, but don't worry, our date night's still on." "All right," I said, forcing a smile, but it didn't sit right with me. The way she said it, like she was reassuring herself more than me. There was something in her eyes, something fleeting. Maybe I was reading into it, but I felt a tug in my chest I couldn't ignore. "All right," I repeated, though it came out more like a question than I intended. She grabbed her bag, kissed me again, this time even quicker, and left without a word. I watched her go, trying to shake off the tight feeling in my gut. Everything's fine, I told myself again. It had to be. But that nagging feeling only grew as I cleaned up the breakfast dishes. The cracks were already there, but I couldn't see them yet. I tried to push the thought of Nora aside, but it didn't work. All morning, my mind kept circling back to the little things, the distance in her voice, the way she'd rushed out the door without a second glance. The more I tried to focus on work, the more the worry gnawed at me. My desk felt far away, like it belonged to someone else. I couldn't stop checking my phone, half expecting to see a text from Nora. Nothing. I shot off a few more messages. "Hey, how's your day going?" And "let me know when you can talk." But I got no replies, and after a while, I started to feel stupid for even caring. At lunch, Jason found me huddled in the break room, picking at my sandwich. He slid into the seat across from me, his eyes narrowing like he could already tell something was off. "You good?" he asked, like he was reading my mind. I gave him a half smile and shrugged. "Yeah, just busy." Jason didn't buy it. He leaned back in his chair, eyes still on me, waiting for the real answer. He knew me too well. "Matt," he said slowly, "you've been acting off. This is about Nora, isn't it?" I took a deep breath, not wanting to open up, but I could feel the pressure building in my chest. "It's nothing, Jace, really, just a little stuff going on. Work, you know?" Jason didn't look convinced, but he didn't push it. He just nodded. "All right, but if you need to talk, you know I'm here." I forced a smile. "Thanks, man." But as soon as he left, I was back to staring at my phone. The silence from Nora was crushing. It didn't make sense. If everything was fine, why wasn't she getting back to me? I opened the bank app on my phone, trying to distract myself. But when I saw the recent transactions, my stomach tightened. Dinners at places I didn't recognize. A few car rentals in the last month. And the gifts. Too many of those. Expensive ones. Her spending didn't match up with what she'd been telling me. I stared at the screen, my heart thudding against my ribs. Something wasn't adding up. By the time I got home, the unease had spread into a full-on knot in my stomach. Nora's car was in the driveway, but her phone was still off. The house felt empty, even though I could see her shoes by the door, her jacket on the couch. Everything was there, everything that should have felt familiar, but it all felt off. I paced for a few minutes, my mind racing, before I grabbed my phone and called her again. It went straight to voicemail. I tried texting once more, but no reply. My thumb hovered over the screen, aching to know where she was, what she was doing. The clock was ticking toward dinner time, but I had a bad feeling about it. I could feel the seconds dragging by as the silence between us stretched longer and longer. I should have felt relieved she was home, but all I could think was that she wasn't really here, not in any way that mattered. And then, as if the universe had decided to pile on, I got a message. It wasn't from Nora. It was from her best friend, Kelly. Matt, I don't know how to say this, but Nora, she's been seeing someone. I don't know what to tell you, but I thought you deserved to know. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't a confession, not exactly, but it was the crack that shattered everything. Kelly hadn't meant for it to slip out, but there it was, in black and white. There was no denying it. The truth was staring me right in the face. I dropped my phone on the counter, my hands shaking. It wasn't a big revelation. It didn't change the fact that Nora had been pulling away for weeks. But hearing it from someone else, someone who was close to her, felt like being sucker punched. It confirmed all the things I'd been trying to ignore. I wasn't going crazy. She was slipping away. And whatever it was, whatever had started between her and someone else, it wasn't something I could fix. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Nora, but I didn't pick up. Not yet. I needed time. Time to figure out what I was supposed to do next. I should have been asleep by now, but I wasn't. I sat in the living room, the cold lasagna still on the counter where I'd left it. It had been hours since I'd texted her, called her, since Kelly's message tore through me like a wrecking ball. I tried to wait it out, tried to ignore the sick feeling twisting tighter in my stomach, but the more I sat there, the worse it got. The silence in the house felt suffocating. Finally, around midnight, I heard the front door open. My heart jumped. I didn't move, didn't even look up. She walked in like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't spent the last few hours wondering if I'd been living with a stranger all this time. Her heels clicked on the floor, the sound sharp against the quiet. She didn't apologize for being late, for ignoring my calls, for anything. Just a casual, "Hey," like she was coming home from a normal day at work. I stayed put, still sitting on the couch, hands tight in my lap. I wasn't going to let her brush this off. I wasn't going to be the one pretending everything was fine anymore. The tension between us hung thick in the air. My chest felt heavy with the weight of all the things I didn't know how to say. She took off her coat and tossed it on the back of the chair. "Dinner looks good," she said, glancing at the lasagna, though her voice had a distant quality to it, like she wasn't really seeing it. I didn't answer. I just let the silence stretch out, hoping she'd feel the pressure. She finally sat down next to me, way too casually, like she wasn't breaking my world apart. "I've been seeing someone," she said, not looking at me, but staring at the floor like it was the most boring thing in the world to confess. The words hit me, but I couldn't process them right away. I kept my hands clenched, tried to keep my breathing even. "Who?" The word came out more ragged than I intended, but I couldn't stop it. Her eyes met mine, and there was no guilt there, no regret, just an almost bored look, like she'd already made peace with it. "Charles," she said, like she was saying the name of someone I'd never heard of. "My boss. We've been seeing each other for a while now, and I don't regret it." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I didn't even know what to say. My mouth was dry, my pulse ringing in my ears. She didn't even look upset. She didn't even seem sorry. It was like she was telling me about a new pair of shoes she bought, not the fact that she'd been sleeping with someone else. For a few moments, I stayed silent. Part of me wanted to scream, wanted to make her feel the weight of the betrayal, but the other part of me, the part that was still holding on, even when it didn't make sense, just stayed still. I was trying to hold it together, but the shock was turning into something else, something colder. She kept talking, oblivious to the storm in my chest. "He's been a lot more attentive than you have lately, and, honestly, I'm just happier." I felt the words burn into me, but I didn't react. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't make it worse. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even close. She'd already checked out. Instead of shouting, I stood up, walked over to the kitchen, and put the lasagna away. I didn't want it anymore. Not that night. When I turned back around, she was already standing up, brushing past me like she had somewhere else to be. I don't know why that stung so much, but it did. It was like she couldn't be bothered to even try to make this right. She paused at the door to the bedroom, her hand on the frame. "I'm going to bed," she said, her tone flat. "Okay," I replied, my voice rough. I didn't follow her. I didn't want to. I could feel it all crashing down, the weight of everything I'd ignored, the years of small signs that I'd convinced myself were nothing. She wasn't coming back from this. Not for me, not for us. I knew that now, deep in my bones, not because of some grand argument or emotional outburst, but because the truth was there, clear as day. She no longer valued me. I didn't wait for her to fall asleep. I didn't feel the need to. Instead, I went to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror for a while, wondering how I'd missed it, wondering how I could have been so blind. But it didn't matter anymore. The damage wasn't just emotional, it was systemic. It wasn't just that she'd cheated, it was everything. The years I'd spent trying to hold things together while she slowly pulled away, the lies, the little things I ignored. She hadn't just betrayed me in the moment. She'd been quietly dismantling everything we had for a long time. The next morning after breakfast, I didn't expect to call Hank. But by the time I was done staring at the screen of my phone, I knew I had to. He'd been through his own divorce, had the battle scars to prove it. He was the only person I trusted to get it, someone who'd been there and could see what I was about to go through. I didn't even let it ring long before he picked up. "Hey, Matt," he said, his voice rough like he'd just woken up. He probably had. It was early, but I needed to talk. I need some advice," I said, trying to keep it together. My voice felt tight, like the words were stuck in my throat. "Nora, she's been seeing someone else. I just found out. I'm done. I don't know what to do next." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear Hank's deep breath, like he was taking a second to process what I said. He'd seen it before. Maybe not the same way, but he knew how the story went. "All right," he said, his voice softer now. "First things first. Don't let her have the upper hand. You can't let her walk away thinking she's got control, Matt. She's been pulling the strings for way too long. Now it's time to take the reins. The first step is always about holding on to what's yours, whether it's your finances, your assets, or your emotions. Cut off the things that gave her control." It was like a switch flipped inside me. His words hit me harder than I expected. I'd been so focused on the hurt, the betrayal, the emotional mess of it all, but I hadn't stopped to think about how to fight back, how to take back what was mine. "Yeah," I muttered, more to myself than to him. "Okay, I get it. Good," Hank said, sounding pleased. "Start by freezing everything you can. The joint accounts, the credit cards. She doesn't get to keep spending like everything's fine. Don't give her that. And if you haven't already, start the divorce papers. You don't need to drag this out any longer than you have to." I could feel the weight lifting, piece by piece, as Hank spoke. I'd been drifting in a fog, but his voice was like a lifeline, pulling me back to shore. I had a plan now. For the first time in days, I felt clear-headed. "I'm going to cancel her credit card access," I said, already pulling up my bank app. "And I'll start the divorce papers. I'm done being the guy who just takes it. I've been sitting here, letting her get away with everything, but not anymore." "Exactly," Hank replied. "Make sure you get a lawyer too, someone who can help you with the details. And don't forget about the emotional side of things either. You need to protect yourself, man. This isn't just about fighting back. It's about getting back what she's taken. All of it." I didn't even realize how much I'd been holding my breath until I let it out in one long exhale. I felt lighter, more in control, but there was still a knot in my chest. I wasn't going to let Nora have the last word, but I knew there was still more to do. "I'm going to hire a private investigator," I said, staring at the phone. "Get evidence of her and Charles. I need something concrete for the divorce." Hank let out a low whistle. "You're not messing around, huh?" I shook my head, though I knew he couldn't see me. "No, I'm not. This isn't about revenge, Hank. It's about justice." "Good," Hank said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Make sure you've got everything locked down, Matt. Because once you start this, there's no going back. You need to be ready for whatever comes next." I hung up with a plan, my first taste of freedom. I spent the next few hours making calls, freezing accounts, researching lawyers, and even looking into private investigators. I was methodical, almost mechanical, but the more I dug, the more I started to see things I hadn't expected. More withdrawals, more spending, more lies. And then I found something that made my stomach turn. Pictures. A few social media posts that were too casual, too careless. Nora and Charles, at a restaurant, laughing, holding hands, publicly flaunting their affair. My hands went cold as I scrolled through them. My heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't just dealing with a betrayal anymore. They were rubbing it in my face, like they thought they were untouchable. Something in me snapped. I wasn't going to let this go. It was time to make the truth known. The private investigator would give me what I needed to expose them, make sure they paid for what they'd done. I didn't sleep much the night before, but I wasn't tired. I was too focused. The plan was set. My lawyer had been clear. If I wanted to make a statement, I needed to go public. Charles wasn't just some random guy Nora had cheated with. He had a family, a wife, kids. They deserved to know what he'd been up to behind their backs. And it wasn't just about them. It was about Nora, too. She thought she could get away with it. Thought she could hide behind her job and her boss's power. She didn't know I was coming. So, Monday morning, I grabbed the folder of evidence from my desk and walked out of my house. I wasn't nervous. I was calm, steady, like a guy who knew exactly what he was doing. I had the proof. I had the truth. The office was buzzing when I got there. It was a typical Monday, emails piling up, people half-heartedly pretending to work. But today, there was an undercurrent I couldn't ignore. Whispers, side glances. I could feel them, all of them talking. They knew something was off. They didn't know what, but they could feel it. And then I saw Charles. He walked past me quickly, eyes down, like a man stressed about something unrelated. I walked straight to the HR department. I didn't knock. I didn't have to. I was done with waiting. I was done with playing nice. The door opened and they looked up surprised. "Matt," one of the HR reps, Linda said, her voice too high, too forced. She knew what I was there for. "I need to speak to both of you," I said, my voice steady, calm, no anger, no shouting, just the facts. "I'm going to be upfront with you. I have evidence that Charles and my wife, Nora, have been having an affair. It's been going on for months. And it's not just affecting my marriage. It's affecting his family, his wife, his kids, and now it's affecting this company." I set the folder down in front of them, letting the weight of it settle. I could see them glancing at each other, trying to process it, trying to decide how to react. I didn't care. I didn't need their approval. I just needed them to listen. "I don't want to make a scene," I continued, keeping my voice low but firm. "But I have no intention of letting this go unnoticed. I've already contacted the appropriate people. This isn't just a personal matter anymore. It's one that's going to have an impact on the reputation of this company." Linda cleared her throat, glancing at the other HR rep, Greg. "As Matt, we'll need to look into this, of course. But you understand that?" "No," I cut her off. "What I understand is that this company can't keep pretending everything's fine while this is happening under its roof. Charles is an executive here, and if you think he's the only one who should be held accountable for this, you're wrong. Nora's involvement, her betrayal, this isn't just my problem anymore." I stood up, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment. I didn't need to stay and watch them squirm. I had said what I needed to say. I'd made sure the right people knew. I turned and walked out without another word. As soon as I stepped out of the building, the weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying lifted off my shoulders. The tension that had been gnawing at me for weeks felt smaller now, like a knot that was slowly loosening. Exposing the truth wasn't just a small victory, it felt like a fresh start. I knew this wasn't over. Hell, this was just the beginning. But it was the first time in a long while I felt like I was finally in control of my life again. The fallout didn't take long to begin. That afternoon, Charles was called into an emergency meeting, and by the end of the day, rumors started spreading about an internal investigation. There were whispers about the company's PR team working overtime to mitigate the damage. The truth was out. Charles was under investigation, and Nora was no longer untouchable. I didn't know what the next few days would bring. Maybe they'd try to make me the villain in this story. Maybe they'd try to bury the truth. But I didn't care. What mattered now was that the lies were out in the open, and they could no longer pretend they weren't there. I couldn't help but feel a little lighter as I walked away from the office. I didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. Nora and Charles had thought they could hide, but now they had nowhere to run, and I wasn't done with them yet. I walked into the house and froze. There she was, Nora, standing in the living room with a suitcase. One of the handles already zipped up, the other half open. Clothes spilled out, half folded, like she couldn't even be bothered to pack properly. I stood there for a moment, my mind trying to catch up. I wasn't sure what I expected when I came home, but this wasn't it. My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. I had made my choice already. She looked up, her face pale, but her eyes sharp. "Matt," her voice was shaky, like she hadn't expected me to be home yet. "You can't just—" "No," I cut her off, my voice steady, controlled. "This is how it's going to be." She blinked, clearly thrown by my calmness. Her jaw tightened. You think I'm just gonna walk out of here? After everything? Her voice rose now, like she thought if she raised the volume, it would make her right. Matt, we have to talk about this. Please. I didn't let her keep going. No, we don't. You've already made your choice. You've been making it for months. Her face twisted with anger. I didn't. Don't, I said, holding up a hand. Don't try to justify this. I'm done with excuses. There's no excuse for betrayal. Not in a marriage, not in anything. Her eyes flickered with something, maybe guilt, maybe fear, but she quickly masked it. I've tried, Matt. I've tried to talk to you. You've been so distant. You never noticed me, never listened. I stepped forward slowly and she backed up, surprised by the calmness in my steps, the stillness in my voice. That's not on me, Nora. You could have come to me, but you didn't. You chose to sneak around, chose to lie. There's no coming back from that. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Maybe she realized there was nothing left to say. Instead, she just looked at me, angry, hurt, but resigned all at once. I'm packing my things, she muttered, still clutching the suitcase. I didn't offer help. I didn't ask her to stay. I just watched her move through the house like it wasn't the same place we'd once shared. She stopped in the bedroom, throwing a few more things into a bag. She didn't even look at me again. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a few more things from the counter. Slowly, methodically, I started to pack them into boxes. When she came back into the living room, her eyes were red, like she'd been holding back tears she hadn't wanted me to see. You're really just going to let me go? She asked, her voice cracking. Yeah, I said. I am. She stared at me for a few more seconds. Her hands trembled as she zipped up her suitcase. Then, without another word, she walked out the door. I didn't feel relief right away, not until I heard the door click shut behind her, and the silence settled into the space. Then it hit me, all at once. The weight I hadn't realized I was carrying for years just lifted. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I knew the divorce would go through soon enough. It wasn't about the paperwork. It was about the truth and the finality of it. Nora and I were done. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't have to walk on eggshells. I didn't have to wonder if I was the problem. I wasn't. I focused on what came next, getting my life back on track. It wasn't just about the divorce. It was about me, rebuilding my career, finding myself again. I started reconnecting with old friends, some I hadn't seen in ages, and it felt like the pieces of my life were falling into place. For the first time in so long, I felt like I had a future ahead of me. My life, the one I had almost lost, was finally mine again. And the best part, I was stronger than I'd ever been. I wasn't just surviving, I was living. Nora had taken a lot from me, but now I was free.